Yeah, so I'm Sam Rowlands. I'm the lead candidate for the Welsh Conservatives in Fflint Wrecsam. I've got into politics through being a councillor back in my old hometown where I used to live in Abergele down the coast. But I've been a member of the Senedd in North Wales for the last 5 years. Held different roles down in the Senedd, most recently being the Shadow Finance Minister. So Mark Drakeford's been a Finance Minister. My role has been to challenge him on all sorts of different things. Before I was involved in politics though, I worked for a bank for 10 years, so I worked for HSBC and a few different roles there. But yeah, seeking re-election here in Fflint Wrecsam on the 7th of May. That's a great question, that is. I've got a few different things I've been involved in the Senedd since I've been down there. In particular, I've chaired a few what are called cross-party groups. So one of those, for example, is on faith. I'm a Christian. My Christian faith is really important to me, and I know faith is important to lots of people across Wales. So I'm interested to see how my work in working between how faith groups can work closely in communities and work closely with people making decisions. That's going to be interesting world to have a look at. I've also been involved in trying to introduce legislation in the Senedd around outdoor education. I had quite a different education. I was home educated up until high school, and then went into a normal sort of state school. I think there's real benefits in giving parents in particular choice around how education works, and I'm quite passionate about outdoor education, getting children out of the classroom, learning through being outside and much more. So I'll undoubtedly get involved in that type of work as well, alongside all the usual kind of political things that we get stuck into when it comes to legislation and things. I guess often my comfortable place is to do with numbers. So as I said, working for a bank for 10 years, and I've sat on the finance committee in the Senedd. So I often sort of gravitate towards finance stuff, which underpins obviously most of decision making that takes place. So undoubtedly get involved in that as well. So there's local themes, and in terms of a theme locally, I think the cost of living, which is not just a local issue, of course, it's a UK issue, but people on the doorsteps are bringing it up time and time again. So the specifics we can do around that, which is getting more money back in people's pockets through keeping tax increases to a minimum, and we would love to see tax decreases so people have more money in their pocket to spend on things that matter to them. But things like real specific issues, the parking at Wrexham Miler has been a constant thorn in people's sides for a long time. Being able to meet with the health board to discuss some of the options around that, and there are some ways that parking can be solved. I mean, we do live in the 21st century. I'm sure it's not beyond the wit of man to introduce things like AMPR and other schemes that people are just used to when it comes to using parking spaces. And then transport is always a challenge for people, in particular some of the bottlenecks at particular junctions. Been looking at a campaign on the A483, the junction 4 there, to look at how we could make people's lives easier through better junctions. Public transport comes up on the doors a lot as well, particularly in slightly more rural areas outside of the town centre here. The bus routes into town just aren't as frequent as they need to be. So there are things we can do with that, but we are, as Conservatives, really keen to see investment in infrastructure like our roads. We feel as though over recent times there's been a real anti-motorist agenda from the Welsh Government. Things like the introduction of the 20 miles per hour default speed limits have been a testament to that, I think. So we recognise actually most people need a car to get around, and we do live in a fairly rural part of the world. So we want to make it as easy as possible for people to use their cars, to get to work, to get to college, to see their loved ones, whatever it is they need to do. So it requires investment in our road networks. We want to roll back those 20 mile per hour default speed limits, keep it outside schools and where it makes sense. But we're trying to recognise that most people use a car to get about their daily lives and make that as easy as possible for people. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right to point at the issues with Betsy Cadwallader. I think sadly people in North Wales have kind of got used to it and haven't always realised actually it can be a whole lot better. Some of the ideas we've got are making sure we're working much better cross-border. I'm a proud Welshman. I recognise that the Senedd has responsibilities in Wales, I'm also a proud Brit, and I think we should be working with health trusts in England as well, whether it's in Chester or Liverpool, Manchester, who can take capacity to support people here in North Wales as well. Don't see any issue with that whatsoever. We should be working much better cross-sector. So that's with the third sector, as in charities, or the independent sector as well, who can carry out work at the same cost, if not less than what the NHS can provide it for, and always free at the point of use for individuals. But there's capacity there we could and should be making the most of. Quick example on that, cataract operations. Sat down with the gang in Specsavers in Broughton recently. About a third of their customers come from England, about 2/3 come from Wales. Anybody they think might need a cataracts, about 4 weeks wait for those customers who live in England. And they say their heart sinks when they know someone from Wales, because it's been about a 2-year wait for a cataracts operation. And the difference is the health trust in Cheshire there have commissioned services to an independent organisation to deliver those services for the same cost it would cost the NHS. So we need to get rid of ideology when it comes to delivering these services and make sure people can access the healthcare that they need as soon as possible. We also want to introduce reintroduce community hospitals. Over the last 20 years, Welsh Government have stripped out community hospitals. We think that's a really important solution. So currently, you get the acute care at somewhere like Wrexham Miler, and there's you get discharged back home quite often. There's a whole group of people who just need a little bit of respite care in between. Doesn't need the full attention perhaps and expertise in an acute hospital, but aren't perhaps healthy enough to be able to go back home. So by building some community hospitals, actually that would introduce an extra level of care, which would make a big difference to our big hospitals in the area. And finally, a really important area of healthcare is our GP services. We're seeing more and more people turn up at A&E who just need to be seen by a GP. So it's causing a backlog in our A&E, which makes it more difficult for our paramedics to drop off their patients, which causes a backlog with ambulances. So we want to see how GPs can either extend their hours, have opening times of weekends as well, so people have much better access to a GP as well. So Natural Resources Wales is just not fit for purpose. You speak to anybody who has an interaction with them. There's some really good people in there trying their best to make it work. But it's a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde, because they're both the regulator and they also carry out work at the same time. So often they're arguing between themselves as an organisation. I'm sure you're aware, but there used to be separate organisations that was brought into one. One was a regulatory arm, one was actually delivering stuff, and one was around forestry. So it hasn't worked. It's slowing development down, it's slowing planning permissions down. So we think it needs breaking up and re-looking at again. In terms of our environment, we think some of the most important people when it comes to managing our environment are those who own the land, and the vast majority of that in Wales are farmers. So the relationship with farmers from the Welsh Government has broken through the Sustainable Farming Scheme, the SFS. And what that isn't doing, it's not recognising actually farmers, they know the land best. And they know that without a healthy, productive land, they're not going to be able to do the job that they literally live 24/7 to do. So the next Welsh Government must build that relationship back up with farmers and recognise actually farmers can do a huge amount to support and protect our environment, because it's in their best interest to do so. If they haven't got healthy, productive land, they can't do the job that they literally do day in, day out. So housing is a massive issue for people in terms of affordability. Basic part of economics is supply and demand. So we can increase the supply of housing and make housing more readily available to people. That either brings costs down in terms of housing or stops the increase from being as high as it would have been. And talking to young people, I've been at Hustings just this afternoon in Deeside College. And you know, you've got 17, 18-year-olds there who are really concerned and really stressed about their ability to ever get their own home. And we'd love more people to own their own home. We think home ownership, and well, we know that home ownership is the aspiration of the vast majority of people. It's the most secure type of housing that you can have. So we need to make sure those houses are being built so people can own their own home, support their own family as best as possible, and call this part of the world their home. When it comes to Fflint Wrecsam, people listening to this, watching this, will know that housing is a challenge for them as well when it comes to affordability. So we want to increase the supply of that housing, make sure they have people have access to appropriate housing. Affordable housing is one element of it, but it also needs to be the right type of housing. We're seeing an ageing population where things like bungalows are really important for them. So it's not just housing being affordable, which is important, but appropriate at the same time. So we're seeing many more sort of single-person households. So you'd expect to see, one-bedroom or two-bedroom houses or apartments being built as well. So, yeah, housing. The Labour government have failed, in my view, to deal with housing here in Wales. The number of houses being built in Wales at an all-time low. And we need to reverse that. It's good for the economy, it's good for the industry, and it's good for people looking for a home. No, the Welsh government has been in place now for 27 years. They have responsibility over some really significant areas, and unfortunately they are failing in nearly all of those areas. If it was a responsibility of Westminster, you'd expect to see a consistent case of failure across the UK, but Wales is by far the worst performing in many areas. So, for example, on waiting lists, Wales got the longest waiting lists in Great Britain. In terms of education outcomes, the international rankings, PISA scores are the worst in the UK. When it comes to the economy, we've got some of the lowest pay packets in the UK. When devolution started in 1999, Wales and Scottish pay packets were pretty much the same, about £100 difference in the average pay for Scottish workers than it was for Welsh workers. Now, Scottish workers earn on average £3,000 a year more than Welsh workers. That's an example of devolution taking place in different parts of the UK and the Welsh Labour government, propped up by Plaid Cymru, failing when it comes to the economy. The WDA was a massive success in bringing new business into Wales. We know that the economy is fundamental to the future of Wales. Without a thriving economy, our young people, as they are at the moment, are leaving Wales in droves. So we need an economy that works, we need business thriving, we need well-paid jobs. So the WDA, we believe, works well because it has industry experts on it, and not just civil servants or government people on the payroll of the government who do a good job, and they need to bring advice and expertise as well. There's nothing quite like people who run a business, who know what it's like to have to get up, finish the day with a profit, because if you don't make a profit, your mortgage won't get paid. There's nothing quite like it. We need those type of people having a real, making a difference when it comes to attracting investment here in Wales. So we think we might be called the WDA, but that style of organisation makes a big difference for attracting investment and creating new jobs. I think the policy which feels the most conservative for me is the one around scrapping those business rates for the smallest businesses. I think some of our biggest heroes that we have here in Fflint Wrecsam are those small business owners, those people who get up early in the morning, open their front shop or on a high street, whatever it might be, or go out to work with their business. They're employing perhaps 2 or 3 people, but they're putting their neck on the line, working hard, employing people. I think the support we should be providing to those small businesses, recognising actually without them our high streets would be empty, we wouldn't have thriving town centres. So by scrapping those business rates for those smallest businesses, it gives them a foot on the ladder to actually be able to survive and hopefully thrive, and hopefully employ more people, create those jobs that we all want to see in this part of the world. So yeah, scrapping those business rates for small businesses, for me, I'm really proud of that as a policy. Fundamentally shifting the economy to be a welcoming place for business, welcoming place for investment, a place where people see aspiration as not a dirty word, a place where people have ambition and want to better themselves and better their families, and yeah, so economy fundamentally. Secondly, health service. We have already mentioned the failings in this local health board here in North Wales, but across Wales as a whole. We want people to not be in fear when they go to hospital, not in fear that they're going to be stuck in there for far too long, or not going to get the treatment that they need, or not in despair that their loved one's been on the waiting list for 2, 3, 4 years. So we'll shift the focus on our economy to be one that's thriving, where people have ambition. We want our health service to work for people. I think thirdly as well, education really worries me. That's our future of Wales. So I want an education system where children come out at the end of it with, yes, good quality results, but also well-rounded individuals who have aspiration to further themselves, whether it's in work or an apprenticeship or even onto university, whatever it might be. Just want to raise our aspirations, lift our heads up a bit from perhaps looking down far too much and actually seeing Wales as an incredible place to live, an incredible place to bring up your family. I think we can do it here in Wales. Well, I think Welsh Conservatives know what it means to see an economy thrive. And I think that Welsh Conservatives would want to see people in work with a well-paid job as well. We also believe there's a real core principle around family. And we want to see people's families doing well. And sometimes it's real stress, especially in times like now where cost of living is really affecting lots of people's lives. So our core values go around supporting, make sure an economy that works and where businesses are supported, that family is recognised as a fundamental part of our society and the foundation of our society. So that's why I want to put things in place like improvements to childcare, to make sure family unit can work really well together as best as possible. And then also for Welsh Conservatives, we understand there's real pragmatic things that just need to get sorted. We want to scrap those 20 miles per hour defaults. We want to cut waste. Things like £200 million being spent on Cardiff Airport, which is making zero difference to people up here whatsoever. The Welsh Government spend the money on planting trees in Uganda or buying solar panelled boats for the Wampi tribe in the Amazon. We think those sort of things are complete waste. So we want to drill down, make sure money's being spent on priorities that affect people here in Wales. So a strong economy, supporting families, enabling people to take personal responsibility and holding a government to account to make sure it's delivering things that people in Wales really care about.